Well, we're firmly into Season 2 on TV, but we'll leave covering those and slotting them into our timeline on the Canon catch-up for a future episode. For now, let's focus on the adventures the 15th Doctor has had in the last 4 months before the show came back, where they fit on his timeline, and what we learn in them. We get a prequel to a 1980s comic story, the final Doctor and Ruby novel, and another adventure in the mobile game, all to cover on this episode. Welcome to the Canon Catch-Up. This is the show where we take every adventure of the 15th Doctor in every medium and try and slot them into some kind of coherent timeline and discuss what we learnt in the stories along the way. Let's get the one you've likely all seen out of the way very quickly, the TV special Joy to the World, in which we find the Doctor borrowing some milk at the Time Hotel in the early years of the 43rd century, a good 6 centuries before the Time Agency was known to exist, but it looks like time travel technology is well established by humans even by this point. It seems it might be still fairly recent that the Doctor stopped travelling with Ruby, as he still instinctively gets her a cup of tea when he gets himself one. The Belinda Weapons Manufacturing Corporation, first mentioned in either The Empty Child or The Doctor's Dancers, I forget which of that two-parter it was mentioned in, from 2005 Series 1, and later in Twice Upon a Time, and most recently, Boom is up to no good with a starseed device in a briefcase that they are looking to take back in time and give it the time it needs to get ready to go boom. In the course of trying to stop this, the Doctor meets Joy, who is the latest in a series of individuals to become possessed by the briefcase in order to get it to where it needs to be. And he ends up trapped in the year 2025 while he waits for one of the hotel doors to reopen for a whole year, in which time he lives in a London hotel and befriends the hotel manager, solving lots of her everyday problems with his timey-wimey technology future type ways. Before after a year he leaves to go back, give a code to his past self, saving Joy from the briefcase, albeit temporarily. Because in the end, Joy ends up absorbing the starseed and ascending to the sky to become a star over ancient Bethlehem, implying that she was the mythical Star of Bethlehem from the Christian Bible. I'd kind of already placed this one on the timeline, so let's just keep it where it is. It's fairly obvious. It comes after the last season. There's a few things that go on between the end of last season and this. We'll put it just after the proms interlude. Now let's get on to the comics. We've got a couple of Doctor Who magazine one-shots to cover as well, but to wrap up the final part of the Monster Maker's story first. Held at gunpoint by Xerxes, the Doctor and Ruby get a bit of good luck when the transformed villagers from the planet below attack the space station because they've been given wings. This was due to Ruby, when hooked up to the Mind Machine, wishing them to be given the wings she had developed when she was captured by the Snow Queen in the Hands of Fear comic story, which we covered in previous editions of the catch-up. Amongst the distraction, the former CEO of Cohort Co stuns Xerxes, and Ruby uses the mind probe to sing the Venusian lullaby to the attacking villagers to calm their rage. It turns out that the sale of Cohort Co to Xerxes was a con all along, and the villagers could never actually be reformed into an army because they were made of psychoplasm and would always revert to the human form after 93 minutes. The Doctor had encountered psychoplasm before when, as the 14th Doctor, he'd come across an amusement park selling Dalek experiences with Daleks made from the substance. That was in the Doctor Who magazine comic Liberation of the Daleks. Xerxes is sent off to the Shadow Proclamation to stand trial, and the villagers return to the planet and plan to vote to see if they want to go in search of Earth or stay there. I placed this story last episode, so I'll leave it where I put it. There's no new information that would change that in this last part. Then we've got Run, a one-shot comic in Doctor Who magazine. In this one-part comic strip, the Doctor lands on the planet Grey Grieving to watch its famous double dawn. He's travelling on his own, but this still must be fairly soon after Ruby's departure, as he calls back into the TARDIS for her before remembering that she's not there. Almost immediately he encounters someone marked with a black spot running from a giant wolf-like creature. This person passes the spot onto the Doctor before being eaten themselves. The creature had been trapped in a shadow trap, but the double dawn, which happens every 42 years, gives it a chance to escape, and the human hunters to have some sport chasing it, but it intends to possess the Doctor and escape using his TARDIS. The Doctor, with some help from some local flying creatures, manages to outrun it long enough to lure it back into the trap. Because of the early line about Ruby, I'm going to put this before Joy to the World on the timeline, because actually calling back to Ruby seems like something you'd do earlier than just absent-mindedly making her a cup of tea or coffee. The next one-shot in Doctor Who magazine is Dance Till You Drop. There was another one-part comic in Doctor Who magazine issue 614 which sees the Doctor still travelling alone, landing in 1977 New York during the disco era, where a talking cat, of all things, hypnotises the Doctor to jump into a puddle, which seems to be some kind of portal to an underground disco club. You know, a usual Saturday night for the Doctor. The club seems to be ruled by a big, yellow, dancing banana creature thing called Mr. Beatty, who says they are from the Beatine dimension of dance. Mr. Beatty has danced all your world leaders into the tomb. Whatever that means. Are they dead? Or are they the ones dancing behind him? Either way, he challenges the Doctor to a dance-off for the planet. Beatty starts to drain the Doctor's dance energy while he's dancing, turning his feet to stone, and the Doctor's only saved when the hypnotic cat trips up Mr. Beatty and forces him back into his own dimension. At the end of the story, the cat disappears, and I couldn't quite tell if the Vorp in that thing was meant to be the cat. Is this some kind of TARDIS cat? I don't know. Are we going to see this cat again? I suspect so. Look out for it in future comics, I reckon. Now, this could go before or after Joy to the World. The Doctor's still thinking about Ruby a bit, but no reason he wouldn't also after the Christmas special, so let's put it afterwards for a bit of variety. And finally, the most recent one-shot comic is No Sign of Life. Appearing in Doctor Who magazine issue 615, this comic sees the Doctor respond to an SOS distress call landing in a hospital city, where he is attacked by grey goo-like creatures made from self-replicating nanoforms. After finding the seemingly cryogenically frozen physician founder of the world, Gothar, he's told that Gothar created a synthetic being, Panacea, to extract death itself, but it corrupted and started taking life instead. Then the population turned themselves into the goo, hoping to starve Panacea of its food. The Doctor manages to reprogram the goo creatures, but also works out that Gothar isn't Gothar, but is actually Panacea themselves trying to get off the planet. The Doctor destroys the giant statue of Gothar that had been acting as a transmitter for the SOS, and leaves Panacea there stranded. But this isn't the end of the story for that planet, as this story is actually a prequel to a story from the 1980s comics in which a Cyberman ship landed on the planet looking for the legendary Deathsmiths of Goth and their fabled weaponry. The weaponry had actually been medical equipment in the museum, and they encounter Panacea, here referred to as the Apocalypse device. Most of the Cybermen are killed apart from Cyber leader Maxwell, who realises while he was escaping that he was left alive so that the Apocalypse device could stow away, so he self-destructs his ship, leaving Panacea stranded once again. But there does appear to be some Sontarans landing at the end of the story. It's kind of nice when the comic does these little callback to decades-old strips. Maybe one day we'll get that Sontara featuring sequel. And in terms of the timeline, I don't see any reason why this can't just follow on from the previous one-shot comic. Now we've got the final 15th Doctor and Ruby novel, Eden Rebellion. Sorry it's taken me a little while to get round to this one. And we're going back a bit on the timeline now, because obviously, Ruby's still around. Ruby and the Doctor arrive on the crystalline planet of Yiwa, where the renowned Gardens of Kubitu are considered the most peaceful destination in the universe, at least until the Doctor and Ruby arrive. Ancient rivalries between Yahweh and its more prosperous sister world of Bia are being stirred by forces unknown, threatening to plunge its people into anarchy. With Ruby swept up in the fire of the Yahwehan rebellion, the Doctor finds dark secrets buried in the planet's ancient history and hopes for a lasting peace hanging by a thread. For sinister guardians stalk the gardens of Kubuntu, while an implacable enemy plots in the shadows and in plain sight. This story starts at the end of a dangerous adventure with the duo running back into the TARDIS at the end of it, so we kind of have an unseen adventure that's already happened off-screen, off-book there. There's also some references to past adventures in this one. Giant lobsters hell-bent on world domination, alien cosplayers or sentient playgrounds manned by robot children. So based on the alien cosplayers line, we can assume this story is set after Rogue, in which a bunch of avian aliens were cosplaying as Regency-era British aristocracy. Another reference to that story comes later in the novel when Ruby says she doesn't have the psychic earrings, this time when she magically knows a local dance. The psychic earrings were introduced in that episode Rogue and allowed Ruby to psychically know the dance she was meant to be performing in that episode.
Psychic earrings. Choreography beamed into your motor system, tap twice to choose your moves. It's like instant Strictly.
The Doctor mentions that the planet they are on, and the Gardens specifically, were resting places for the Eternals, elemental, powerful entities from the Dark Times that first appeared in the Fifth Doctor TV story Enlightenment. It seems that the Bea race they meet during this story are well travelled, as they are aware of Time Lords, and one of them even knows of the Doctor and says he studied him at university, and that the Doctor was his superhero. Also referenced in this book is the Doctor's collecting of Ruby's DNA and fingerprints, first seen in Space Babies, and he says here openly that it's in an effort to help track down her mum. Given all that, it makes sense to place this after Rogue, but probably before the Titan comics, as those Titan comics do seem to lead directly into the finale of Season 1. And finally, we've got the Lost in Time game again, the mobile game, which has limited time event storylines, like this one, Loving Memory. Thank you once again to Mr. TARDIS for providing the footage of the game. In this latest event, the Doctor and Ruby land on a colony ship in at least the 450th century, during the Neo-Terran Imperium, a period of time I think hasn't been covered by any Doctor Who story before. The closest we get, I think, is a reference to a time 12,000 years before this in the 9th Doctor novel Only Human. Anyway, back to the colony ship. The TARDIS duo get initially mistaken for saboteurs before flashing the psychic paper and posing as Imperial inspectors. They were discovered by someone calling themselves Navitrix, same as someone they encountered in the last mobile game event. The Doctor explains that this is because many humans of this time were grown, not born, and therefore from birth she was destined to be a navigator, and therefore given that name. So I guess the previous mobile game event must also take place in a similar set time period. Apparently, humanity has a rough couple of centuries before this particular empire, but that doesn't mean the Doctor is going to trust them. The two crew members that awake from cryogenic sleep try to blame a small blue creature for the sabotage, but the Doctor tells them this creature is a Clanortaman, a physical manifestation of the love from beyond the veil that the shipbuilder, the Navitrix's father, put into building the ship, and the creature has actually been trying to fix the ship. It then turns out the Navitrix's crewmate is the one who is the saboteur, jealous that the Navitrix's inheritance as ruler of their future destination. Navitrix, however, says that they don't plan on taking up the leadership and wants to help try and reform their empire to be, amongst other things, less alien-phobic. Good for them. Back in the TARDIS, Ruby asks to see more aliens, and the Doctor says he'll take her to visit an old friend, and that they're going to need sunscreen because they're going to a star. Now, someone in my comments saying that they in fact wrote the story for this game, places all the 15 and Ruby game events in the 6 months between Space Babies and Devil Court, and while I can't verify their employment claim, it fits there fine, so let's just put this one right after the last event. Next time we'll slot in the first batch of Season 2 episodes, there'll be some more comics to cover I'm sure, and we'll see what else the Whoniverse brings. And if you like more stuff trying to check out where stuff fits in timelines, why not check out this playlist of the Time Lord Victorious Canon Update, where I chart how all of the entries in the Time Lord Victorious multi-platform event all click together.